Well, I wouldn't. I'm not so sure it would be as short as a year, 12 months. But I think China is very well down the road now, in terms to rolling out its own CBDC, the yuan, and part of that, I think, is to try and internationalize its own currency as much as possible. The fact that the Chinese economy is, well, obviously is common knowledge, it's the second biggest economy in the world right now. And a lot of economies, a lot of businesses around the world are hugely dependent on what happens. So the fact that it is trying to, on one hand, internationalize the renminbi through the use of its own CBDC, alongside what it's doing with its social credit system, for example, I think we'll see major leaps in that. It's also a way for China to try and, I suppose, diminish its dependence on the dollar if it achieves that objective. If the CBDC is embraced by other governments around the world or is transacted, it's a way. And of course, alongside that is the issue of sanctions. The US government is able to use the dollar dominance to leverage sanctions, because you cannot have access to the US financial system if you're dealing with a sanctioned party. I mean, if you're thinking like countries like Iran and so forth, it's another. I mean, and China has been buying oil from Iran for years. So the CBDC takes on a secondary objective as far as they're concerned. So I expect quite a lot of progress in that regard as far as China. The more, on the one hand, that the temperature goes up between the geopolitical temperature goes up between Beijing and Washington, the more I expect that to accelerate. I think obviously countries like Russia, they're going to want to get to grips with their own CBDC as quickly as possible, again, as a method to skirt the sanctions, and also to diminish their necessity for them to hold dollars or transact in dollars. And obviously that brings up, the ripple effect of that, could impact on emerging sort of groups like BRICS, which are now starting to bring in new members fairly rapidly, actually. There's some talk that they would like to bring about their own currency, whether that's could be a CBDC, I don't know. But for nefarious reasons, countries like China, Russia, Iran, I suppose, because Iran it just seems, Washington and Tehran seem incapable of reaching an agreement which would be acceptable to Israel, for example. So I see some instability there, but that instability could push Iran to have its own CBDC. So the question then comes, to what degree would those CBDCs be transacted by the international community? Well, probably not in the US, but elsewhere, the fact that central banks could have the ability to talk to each other has also wider implications for dollar use, etc. So I see quite a lot of movement, probably initially from the countries that are sanctioned